We already cleared out your room and threw everything away." That was the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes. The text glowed on my phone screen, harsh and final. "My name is Margaret. I'm 52 years old, and 3 hours ago I was fighting for my life on an operating table." Now I was fighting something colder. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and plastic curtains. Machines hummed. I blinked at the ceiling lights, thinking maybe it was a bad dream. I reached for my phone again, scrolling up, hoping for another message, some sign that my daughter had sent it by mistake. There was nothing, just silence and that sentence. Before the pain fully settled, memories slipped in like warmth through a cracked door. I remembered the smell of roast chicken from Sunday dinners, the sound of laughter bouncing off our old kitchen walls, the porch light my husband once fixed after a storm. I could almost hear my daughter humming as she set the table, asking if I wanted more gravy. The warmth of those small things filled me for a moment. Then it all dissolved into the sterile air of this room. The nurse came in quietly, holding a clipboard. "You're awake," she said, smiling carefully. "My daughter, has she been here?" She hesitated. "Not today. Has she said anything? About my things?" Her eyes dropped to the paper. "She signed your discharge forms yesterday. Said you wouldn't be returning." The words hit harder than the surgery. I pulled at the blanket, as if underneath it I might find proof this was wrong. The nurse showed me a list, my belongings cataloged and marked disposed. My clothes, my handbag, even the photo frame from my bedside drawer. Gone. My throat tightened. "She threw away my life," I whispered. "I'm sorry," the nurse said. She placed the paper on the tray and left me to the sound of the monitors. I lay still, staring at the ceiling tiles. Every breath felt like sand in my chest. Somewhere between the anesthesia and waking, my home had vanished. I imagined the porch light turned off, my name scrubbed from the mailbox, my room already filled with someone else's things. For a long time, I did nothing. Then I reached for my phone again. The battery icon blinked red, almost dead, but I typed anyway. Why would you do that? I hit send. The message never delivered. A vow began to build inside me, quiet, slow, certain. If they buried my life, I would dig it back up. Outside the window, dawn crept across the city. The sky turned pale, then gold. A nurse's shoes squeaked down the hall. Life was continuing, but mine had been rewritten without my consent. My daughter's name burned in my mind. I thought about every bill I'd ever paid for her college, every dollar of rent I'd covered when she said she couldn't manage. Now, even the old hospital gown felt like borrowed fabric, a reminder that everything familiar had been taken. The heart monitor beeped steadily beside me. I stared at its green pulse and whispered, "You don't get to decide when I disappear." The machines kept humming, indifferent but alive, same as me. Hours passed. I watched the clock hit 9 in the morning. Breakfast trays rattled outside, and the smell of burnt toast drifted in. My stomach turned. I imagined her voice again, the one that used to call me Mom, with softness. Now it echoed in my head like an accusation. I closed my eyes and pictured my house, sunlight hitting the curtains, dust motes spinning in the air. That image steadied me. I realized something simple. If she could erase me that easily, then she had prepared for it. And if she had planned this, there had to be a reason worth uncovering. I took one long breath. "You wanted me gone," I murmured, "but I'm still here." The nurse returned, surprised I was sitting up. "Try to rest," she said. "I've rested enough," I told her. "Can you tell me where they sent my things?" She hesitated again, then handed me a printed note. Items removed by authorized family member. No forwarding address, just initials, ML. My daughter's handwriting twisted through the page. That's when the warmth finally left me. I felt something else take its place, a cold, deliberate calm. I knew what I had to do. If they buried my life, I'd start digging it up. "Mom, we need $15,000 right now." That was her voice, sharp, frantic, shaking through the speaker, the kind of tone that makes you forget to breathe. I was sitting on the hospital bed, discharge papers half signed, my wrist still marked from the IV tape. My body was weak, but her words landed like a punch. "What happened?" I asked. "We're about to lose the apartment," she cried. "Please just send it today." $15,000. The number hung in the air. I could almost see it floating above the white sheets, heavy and unreasonable. "Where's your father's savings?" I asked softly. "Gone. We needed it for bills," she said. "You have the joint account, Mom. Just transfer it, please." For a second, my chest tightened. I remembered a different morning. Sunlight pouring into the kitchen, the smell of coffee and toast filling the air. She was 12 then, sitting at the table with messy hair and sleepy eyes, asking if I could sign a permission slip. The air was full of laughter and burnt butter. Money had been nothing more than a grocery list, not a lifeline. The scent of that old breakfast drifted into the cold room for a moment, and I almost believed in that world again. But I wasn't in that kitchen anymore. "When is the rent due?" I asked. "Tomorrow. Please, Mom, I'm begging you." Her breath caught between words. I wanted to believe it was real fear. Maybe it was. But something in her tone, it sounded rehearsed, like she'd been practicing. This plea. I pulled my hospital bracelet tight and reached for my purse. Empty. The nurse had told me most of my things were gone. Only the essentials remained: wallet, phone, charger. I tried to open my banking app, but the login failed twice. That sinking feeling again. I called the bank. "Your account was accessed 2 weeks ago," the manager said. "By who?" "Authorized family member," he replied, his voice cautious. "The emergency fund is fully withdrawn." I stared at the screen. There should be at least 14,000 left. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said. "The funds were transferred into a personal checking account ending in 1124. I didn't need to ask whose account that was. The ringing in my ears grew louder than his words. My daughter's sobs filled the line again. "Mom, are you still there?" "I'm here," I whispered. "So you'll send it? Please, don't make me explain to the landlord." Something inside me shifted. Slow, quiet, irreversible. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a wallet she'd learned to open with tears. "No," I said finally. "Not this time." "What?" Her voice cracked. "You already took what was left. You don't need more." "Don't you dare talk to me like that," she snapped, the softness gone. "You think I wanted this? You think this is easy?" "You emptied my account while I was unconscious." Silence, then a short breath. "Maybe you shouldn't have left everything in my name." I pressed the phone to my ear, but she'd already switched tactics. "If you loved me, you'd help," she said. "I have," I told her. "For years. Maybe that's why you don't know what it costs." Her sigh was long, full of exhaustion and something else. Anger, maybe, or guilt. "Then don't call us again," she said, and hung up before I could reply. I sat there, listening to the dead tone. The hospital clock ticked toward 3 in the afternoon. Sunlight cut across the floor tiles, harsh and flat. My hands trembled as I placed the phone down beside me. I tried to breathe, but the air felt borrowed, like I was living on someone else's time. The nurse came by, asking if I was ready to leave. I nodded, though I didn't know where to go. On the ride home, the world outside the car window looked washed out. Billboards about credit loans and fast cash flickered past, mocking me with easy promises. I realized how much of my life had been built on trust, not contracts. I'd paid her tuition, helped with her first rent deposit, covered her emergencies without question. Every dollar I gave had felt like love, and now love had turned into debt. When I reached the house, the porch light was off. The silence was heavier than before. I looked around for the warmth I remembered, the faint smell of dinner, the sound of the TV, but the air felt hollow, stripped of memory. I sat down and tried calling again. No answer. The call went to voicemail after 2 rings. I left a message I knew she wouldn't listen to. "You don't have to beg me, sweetheart," I said softly, "but you can't rob me either." That night, I checked my remaining balance. A few $100s. Enough for groceries, maybe the utility bill, not much else. I lay back, clutching the hospital bracelet still on my wrist. It felt like proof of something, of how close I'd come to dying, and how, somehow, I'd survived just to learn this truth. She hung up before I could say goodbye. Her motive was always hidden in my checkbook. 2 mornings after I left the hospital, I stood in my bedroom, staring at the empty drawers. Not empty from carelessness, cleaned out, wiped down, organized by someone who wanted no trace left. The air still carried the faint smell of paper dust. I opened each drawer one by one, hoping for something, a bill, a note, even a mistake. Instead, only one thing remained, a torn corner of my will. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that scrap. My name was there, half a signature, half a memory of trust. That's when it hit me. My daughter hadn't just been desperate. She had been waiting. I called the lawyer who handled my late husband's estate. "Do you still have a copy of my will?" He paused. "Yes, Mrs. Lee. Should I prepare it for review?" "I'll come by this morning." By 10 a.m., I was sitting across from him in that same brown leather chair I hadn't touched since my husband's funeral. The office smelled of old books and dust. Files lined the walls like quiet witnesses. He slid a folder toward me, my own handwriting staring back at me in black ink. "She asked about this," he said gently. "Who did?" "Your daughter, a few months ago. She wanted to know how inheritance works when a parent passes away during medical care." I ran my fingers across the page, feeling the rough texture of the paper. The words blurred for a moment before settling into cruel clarity. "All remaining assets, property, and accounts are to be transferred to my daughter upon death." Upon death. Those 2 words sank deep. She hadn't acted out of panic. She had been preparing for my absence. "She knew I'd make it easy for her," I said quietly. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "I can help you draft a change, if you'd like." I nodded, barely hearing him. My heart wasn't breaking anymore. It was hardening. For a long minute, I just stared at my own name on that paper. How many times had I signed things without reading the small print, trusting love to protect me? My husband used to say I was too generous. He'd laugh when I bought our daughter new shoes, even when the mortgage was late. He'd say, "One day, that kindness will cost you." I never thought it would be written into law. I asked the lawyer, if someone expected me to die and I didn't, what happens then? He hesitated, caught between honesty and comfort. "Then everything they planned falls apart." That answer was enough. I looked at the date on the document, 6 months before my surgery. She must have asked about it right after my checkup, when I first mentioned needing the operation. It wasn't timing, it was calculation. The lawyer placed his hand flat on the folder. "You can change this," he said again, softer. "We'll file an amendment. Nothing she's done is permanent." I smiled faintly. "She's counting on me to be weak." He met my eyes. "Then show her you're not." As I signed the amendment papers, the pen felt heavier than it should. It wasn't just ink this time, it was defiance. The scratch of the pen filled the quiet room. When I finished, he made a copy for his records, sealing it in an envelope. "This version stands," he said, "and if she asks again, she'll find out she's no longer the sole heir." Walking out of that office, I felt the sun on my face for the first time in weeks. It wasn't warmth, it was awareness. Every small thing in my life had been a transaction to her. Love for convenience, help for control, trust for access. At home, I unlocked the same drawer and placed the torn piece of paper beside the new envelope. Both had my name, both told a story, but only one carried my choice. I looked at the clean lines of the signature and whispered, "She was counting on me not to survive." You can't just walk into my office accusing family. That's what the HR manager said as I stood in the glass hallway of my old workplace. Her tone was firm but uneasy, like someone caught between truth and policy. The air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, and every fluorescent light hummed like judgment. I had come here to find answers, not forgiveness. "I'm not accusing," I said. "I'm correcting." She folded her arms. "Your daughter already came by. She showed documents, legal control, medical consent, power of attorney." My chest tightened. "When was this?" 3 weeks ago," she said. "She said you were incapacitated." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. My name, my position, my work, all closed out while I was unconscious. The betrayal had spread beyond home. "I'd like to see the records," I said quietly. A young man from security joined us. "You're Margaret Lee, right?" I nodded. He hesitated before handing over a printout of the entry log. "She used your badge to get in, claimed she was finalizing your files." My fingers trembled as I held the page. My daughter's name, my access code, my company's logo, all in black and white. "Do you still have the footage?" I asked. The manager sighed. "We're not supposed to show it without approval." "Then get better." "Approval," I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. They led me to a small monitor room where a screen flickered with time-stamped clips. There she was, calm, polite, confident. She wore my favorite scarf, the blue one I thought was still at home. "I'm here on my mother's behalf," she told the receptionist. "She can't make these decisions herself." The lie rolled out of her mouth so smoothly it made me shiver. Watching it, I realized how easy it is to sound convincing when no one expects you to lie. I turned to the HR manager. "Does that look like someone grieving a dying parent?" She didn't answer. Her silence said enough. For a moment, all I could do was stare at the screen. Behind her, I could see my office door. Closed, nameplate still intact. I remembered every hour I'd spent there, late nights finishing reports, weekends balancing ledgers, my paycheck paying her tuition, her first car, her wedding. Every line item in my life had led to this hallway. "Is there a copy of what she signed?" I asked. The manager shuffled through a folder. "She authorized the closure of your position, claimed it was for family reasons." I almost laughed. "Family reasons," I repeated. "That's one way to say fraud." The security officer spoke softly. "Do you want to file a report?" I looked at the screen again. Not yet. Because something in that moment changed. This wasn't just betrayal. It was public now. People had seen her. They'd believed her. And now they were seeing me, standing here, very much alive, refusing to disappear. "I'm alive," I said, steadying my voice. "And I never signed that." The manager exhaled slowly. "Then we'll correct the record." I gathered the papers and thanked them. As I walked out, heads turned in the hallway. Some avoided my eyes, others whispered. It didn't matter. The story had started shifting, even if only by inches. Outside, the afternoon light hit the glass doors, throwing my reflection back at me. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Older, sharper, still standing. My badge still hung from my neck, even though it didn't open doors anymore. For the first time, I felt something close to power, not revenge, just clarity. Truth was beginning to surface, and it was visible enough that others could see it too. Someone in that building started believing me. "She told everyone you were gone for good." That's what my neighbor whispered as I stood by the mailbox, holding a pile of letters addressed to the estate of Margaret Lee. The air felt colder than it should have been for late afternoon. Her voice trembled, half in pity, half in disbelief. "I didn't know what to think," she added. "Your daughter came by last week. She said the funeral was private." I looked at her, trying to find words, but nothing came out. The wind carried a faint smell of candle wax. My eyes caught something tucked into the stack of mail, a folded flyer from the local church. My name was printed under a verse about eternal rest. There was even a date for my memorial service. Inside the house, I spread the mail across the kitchen table. Bills, a condolence card, 2 sympathy letters from coworkers. I traced the printed letters of my own name with one finger. Gone for good. The phrase sat heavy. My phone buzzed with another message, someone from the neighborhood group chat sending condolences. I didn't respond. Instead, I clicked through the thread, reading the words one by one. So tragic. She was such a kind woman. Her daughter must be heartbroken. Heartbroken. The same daughter who'd emptied my account, closed my job, and signed my name away. I sat down, the wooden chair creaking beneath me, and laughed. Not the kind of laugh that comes from joy, something sharper. I was attending my own wake, and the guest list didn't even include me. At sunset, I stepped outside. Across the street, a few houses had candles in their windows. A quiet gesture of remembrance. My neighbor approached again, awkward and careful. We all thought... She stopped. You really should talk to the pastor. He's planning to say a few words this Sunday. I'll be there, I said. She nodded slowly, not understanding what I meant. Back inside, I pulled out my old laptop and began searching my name online. Posts, memorial announcements, photo slideshows, all written like I had vanished from the world. My picture, smiling in a floral dress, captioned with words like, "Beloved mother, gone too soon." Each line felt like someone chiseling lies into stone. Then, in one of the posts, I saw it. A fundraiser link, created by my daughter. The description read, "Please help us cover her hospital debts and burial costs." The amount raised, $6,180, sat right there on the screen. My death had become profitable. I printed everything. Screenshots, names, dates, comments. The printer hummed in the quiet room, spitting out paper after paper like confessions. I stacked them neatly in a folder. Proof. Not revenge, just record. When the printer stopped, I lit a single candle and placed it beside the stack. Its small flame flickered against the walls. The house had never felt so still. I whispered to the empty air, "If they want a ghost, I'll give them one." For a long moment, I watched the flame reflect on the glass window. It made the world outside blur, houses, street, sky, all fading behind that thin light. I realized how deep the lie had gone, not just through gossip, but through every circle of trust I'd ever built. People believed what was easier to believe. Dead mothers don't ask questions. At 9 that night, I walked to the front gate. The streetlights glowed pale yellow. I tore one of the flyers in half and dropped it into the trash bin. A car slowed as it passed. Someone looked out the window, squinting as if they'd seen a ghost. Maybe they had. I didn't care about the shame anymore. It wasn't humiliation. It was revelation. I finally knew what I was fighting. Not just greed, but erasure. Back inside, I sat at the table again. The candle had burned low, the wax pooling into a soft circle. I opened my notebook and began to write down every name I could remember, neighbors, coworkers, church members, anyone who had shared or believed the story. Tomorrow, I would start with the church, then the bank, then the lawyer again. Every lie left a trail, and I was done walking it quietly. They buried my name. Now I'll make them say it again. Numbers tell the truth, even when people don't. That's what my accountant friend said as she slid a stack of statements across her kitchen table. The smell of steeped tea filled the air, faint and comforting. Papers rustled as she adjusted her glasses, her voice steady, professional, but her eyes carried the softness of someone who already knew this would hurt me. She pointed to the first page. "These transfers started during your surgery week." I leaned closer. The ink looked ordinary, black on white, but each line carried a cut I hadn't felt before. Amounts, $2,500, $4,200, $6,000, wired to a company name I didn't recognize. "That's your son-in-law's business," she said quietly. "It was registered 3 months ago." I didn't respond. My fingers brushed over the paper, the edges rough against my skin. The figures lined up like dates on a gravestone. Every transaction matched a hospital record, the days I was unconscious, the days she'd told everyone I might not make it. "Every withdrawal ties back to that joint fund," she continued. "And the timing. It's too precise to be coincidence." I swallowed hard. "So, she didn't just take it. She planned it." Her nod was small, cautious. "The trail's clean." He moved it through business invoices, legal enough to fool anyone who doesn't look too closely. I sat back, staring at the wall behind her. A calendar hung there, open to March, marked with numbers and small notes in blue pen. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't angry. I was calm, the kind of calm that comes when denial finally runs out of air. "Can we print everything?" I asked. "All of it," she said. "You'll need copies if you go forward." The printer started humming again, each sheet landing on the stack like a heartbeat. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug she'd placed near me. "You know," I said, half to her, half to myself, "money used to mean groceries, books, and small family trips. Now it's a map of betrayal." She looked at me with quiet pity. "It's still proof," she said. I flipped through the pages, line after line of what used to be trust. Ton $200 here, $3,000 there. The story of my downfall written in neat rows. Each page whispered the same confession. She didn't just want freedom, she wanted ownership. By noon, the table was covered in documents. Bank stamps, invoice receipts, statements with her handwriting in the margins. I found one note scribbled beside a large withdrawal. "Transfer to clinic." But I'd already paid that clinic myself. It wasn't medical care. It was camouflage. My friend spoke softly, breaking the silence. "You can take this to the authorities, Margaret. It's enough." I shook my head. "Not yet. I want the full picture, every dollar, every lie." "Then promise me one thing," she said. "You won't face them alone." I met her eyes. "I won't." But we both knew I probably would. As I gathered the papers, the afternoon light slanted across the table, turning the white sheets golden. For a moment, I remembered a different table, the one at home years ago, covered with crayons and unpaid bills. She used to sit there too, counting change from her allowance while I balanced the checkbook. I taught her how to save, how to earn, how to trust numbers. Now those same numbers were spelling my undoing. I stacked the pages neatly and slid them into a folder. Each sheet felt heavier than the last. Proof of theft, yes, but also proof of her confidence that I'd never wake up, never notice, never fight back. My friend refilled my cup. "What will you do now?" "I'll keep counting," I said, "until I know how deep it goes." She nodded. "Then be careful. People don't like being proven wrong, especially by their own family." Driving home, the folder sat on the passenger seat, silent and solid. The numbers followed me in my head, rhythm steady as a pulse. It was strange. How betrayal could feel mathematical, how love could be measured in debits and withdrawals. When I reached the house, I spread the documents across my desk, flattening each one like a confession. No rage, no shaking hands, just order. Every page a step closer to truth. The last line on the final sheet caught my eye, an account reference ending with her initials. My heart didn't race, it slowed. The numbers spelled her name. "You really think anyone will believe you now?" Her voice hit me before the door even opened. Rain hammered the porch, washing her words into sharp echoes. She stood there, hair plastered to her face, eyes bright with fury. I didn't answer. The porch light flickered above us, throwing her shadow against the wall like something cornered and wild. "I told you to stop," she said. "You're making this worse for everyone." "For everyone, or just for you?" I asked. Her laugh came out small and bitter. "You don't get it, do you? People think you're confused. They pity you. Keep pushing, and you'll lose what little respect you have left." She took a step closer, dripping water onto the doormat. I noticed something then. Her perfume. The same scent she wore at my so-called memorial. Sweet, familiar, and suddenly unbearable. The smell clung to the air as she leaned forward, voice low. "You keep calling banks, lawyers, neighbors. You're embarrassing yourself." I looked at her and said quietly, "That's fine, as long as I'm still alive to do it." For a second her face froze. That was new. She wasn't used to me talking back, especially not like this. The rain softened, but the silence between us didn't. Neighbors were starting to peek from their windows, blinds shifting just enough to catch the scene. "You think this helps you?" she hissed. "Calling people, showing papers, talking about stolen money?" "It helps me remember who I am," I said. Her jaw clenched. "You're nothing without me." "No," I replied. "You're nothing without what you took." The words came out steady, not angry, just true. That's when she shoved past me, shoulder first, into the hallway. The sound of her wet shoes slapping the floor broke the calm. She grabbed a photo frame from the table, the one with all of us smiling at her graduation, and hurled it to the ground. The glass shattered. "You want proof?" she shouted. "Here's proof. You ruined everything." I bent down and picked up the picture, brushing away the shards. "You did that all by yourself." The doorbell rang behind us. She froze again. Through the glass, I saw the blue flash of a police car parked by the curb. My call had gone through 20 minutes earlier when she first started screaming through the gate. An officer stepped inside, calm and direct. "Ma'am, is everything all right here?" I nodded slightly. "It is now." The officer turned to her. "We received a report of verbal threats. Can we talk outside?" Her face drained of color. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "I'd still like you to come with me, ma'am," he said. She tried to smile, but her voice shook. "She's just confused. My mother—" "Stop," I said. "Just stop saying that." For the first time, she listened. The officer wrote something in his small notebook, pen moving fast. The smell of rain drifted in as the door stayed open. It mixed with the faint scent of her perfume, turning the air heavy and strange. When she stepped off the porch, her shoes splashed in puddles. The neighbors were watching more openly now, whispering. For once, their sympathy wasn't aimed at her. The officer looked back. "We'll file this as a verbal warning. You'll get a copy for your records." "Thank you," I said. The phrase felt new, solid. As he handed me the paper, I saw my name typed cleanly at the top. Not estate, not the late, just my name. Proof that I still existed. She glanced back once from the street, water running down her face like something she couldn't hide. The porch light flickered again, catching her expression when she saw the badge pinned to the officer's chest. Her face changed when she saw the badge. "Every lie leaves fingerprints." That was the first thing the lawyer said as he opened the drawer. The metal scraped softly, a dry, tired sound that matched the morning. Dust drifted in the air, faint but sharp. I could smell it. Old paper, old secrets. He slid out a small safe box, set it on the desk, and looked at me like someone about to confirm what I already feared. "You're sure you want to see this?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I've seen worse." He turned the key, slow and deliberate. Inside were several envelopes bound with a rubber band. Some bore my name, others were marked authorization. My stomach sank as I recognized the loops of handwriting that were supposed to be mine. Only they weren't. The lawyer pulled one page free. "Your daughter submitted these last year," he said. "She claimed you approved the transfers." I studied the signature. My name flowed across the line, but it wasn't my hand. The ink bled too thick, the curl of the G wrong by just enough to matter. A stranger's imitation of my trust. "How many pages?" I asked. 5, maybe 6, all notarized copies. The originals would have been destroyed. I pressed my palm against the desk. "And this makes it fraud?" "Without question," he replied. "The handwriting discrepancy, the mismatched dates, it's all here." She overreached. He handed me another sheet. Each one had a transaction tied to it. $12,000 for a property retainer, $8,500 listed as care management. Words dressed up to sound legal, masking what they really were. Extractions. I thought of the nights she sat beside me in the hospital, pretending to read, her fingers resting lightly on my wrist. I'd believed she cared. Now I saw it for what it was. Timing. She had been waiting for my weakness to ripen into opportunity. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We can file a case. This evidence will hold." I didn't answer. My eyes lingered on the paper edges, yellowed where the ink had soaked too deep. "She forged my name," I said softly. He nodded. Every page leaves a trace. He placed the sheets back into the envelope, sealing it with slow precision. The sound reminded me of closing something I'd never open again. For a while, neither of us spoke. Outside, a clock chimed 11. The sound pulled me back to the present. I'd come in searching for facts, and I was leaving with proof, a kind that no apology could erase. "What happens next?" I asked. He leaned back. "Now the law can step in, but it's your choice how far you want this to go." I thought about that, about the years I'd spent believing family was sacred, that betrayal only happened to other people. I remembered birthdays, Christmas dinners, the warmth that used to fill the house, all of it built on the assumption that love and honesty walked together. "I'll go as far as truth allows," I said. He smiled faintly. "Then you'll need copies. Keep one at home, one in a safe place." I took the papers, holding them as if they might bite. The smell of dust clung to my hands. On the way out, the sunlight cut through the office window, sharp and pale. It touched the silver pen on his desk, the same kind she once bought for me on Mother's Day. I stared at it for a moment before turning away. Every lie leaves fingerprints. Hers were now fixed in ink, on record, beyond denial. Now the law had her handwriting. "You're turning everyone against me." That's what she screamed across the room, her voice bouncing off the walls of the small community center. The air was thick with perfume and tension. A dozen faces half-turned between sympathy and discomfort. I sat still, my hands wrapped around a warm coffee cup, feeling the tremor fade from my fingertips. She stood near the door, her arms folded tight, her expression wild. "You think anyone believes you?" she said. "You've been feeding lies to my friends, my co-workers, everyone." I looked up, calm. They were my friends too. The chatter died. Someone cleared their throat. The sound of chairs shifting filled the silence. A few people looked away, pretending to check their phones. The afternoon light spilled through the windows, pale and uneven, turning the circle of faces into a blur of muted color. One of the women from the group spoke quietly. "Maybe we should hear both sides," she snapped back. "You've already picked yours." That's when I reached into my bag and placed my phone on the table. "Then let's let the truth speak." I tapped play. The voice that filled the room wasn't mine. It was gentle at first, trembling. A familiar friend's voice, our mutual friend, recorded 2 nights ago. "I didn't know what else to do," the voice said. "She told me to stop answering your calls. She said you were unstable and that if I didn't help her, she'd ruin me too." The room went still. Even the faint hum of the old ceiling fan seemed to hesitate. My daughter's face paled, the anger draining out for a moment before she forced a shaky laugh. "You recorded people now? That's low, even for you." "No," I said. "It's necessary." I let the recording continue. "I knew it wasn't true," the friend's voice said, "but I didn't want to lose her friendship. I'm sorry for what I said about you. It wasn't fair." I paused the playback. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then someone muttered, "That's awful." My daughter turned toward the circle, her tone desperate now. "You all think this proves something? You think this means she's right? You don't know half of it." A man at the far end spoke quietly. "We've seen enough to know who's been lying." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. She just looked at me, eyes burning with something between rage and disbelief. "You planned this," she said. "No," I answered. "You planned it. I just stopped pretending not to see it." The tension cracked open, and whispers filled the air. Names, fragments, sympathy, small waves of truth spreading in real time. The very people who had once believed her stories now avoided her eyes. She looked smaller suddenly, standing there with nowhere to hide. The group leader leaned forward. "I think we should end here for today," she said softly. "Some things need reflection." But I wasn't done yet. "Before we go," I said, "I want to remind everyone, this isn't about sides. It's about what happens when someone decides your story is more useful dead than alive." No one spoke after that. I could hear every small sound in the room, the scrape of a chair leg, the click of a pen, the uneasy breaths of people trying to reconcile what they just heard. My daughter's eyes darted to the phone. She lunged forward, grabbing it off the table, her voice cracking. "You think this changes anything?" "It already has," I said. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then looked at the faces around her, faces that no longer mirrored her version of events. I could see the realization forming in her expression. The power had shifted, and it wasn't coming back. Without another word, she turned and stormed toward the door. Her heels hit the floor like angry punctuation marks. When the door slammed behind her, the echo carried through the hall, sharp and final. I sat there, exhaling slowly. Someone whispered, "I didn't know." Another voice added, "She really fooled us." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The proof had already spoken louder than I ever could. For the first time, the silence in that room didn't belong to me. It belonged to her. This time, she was the one running. "My name is Margaret Lee, and I'm not dead." That's how I began the interview. The reporter blinked twice, unsure whether to smile or to apologize. The air inside the small newsroom smelled of ink and old paper, the kind of smell that clings to truth waiting too long to be printed. He leaned forward, pen poised. "You're aware people thought you passed away?" "I'm aware they were told that," I said. "And I'm aware who told them." He nodded slowly. "You're saying the obituary notice was fake?" "I'm saying it was deliberate," I replied, "every line of it." He scribbled something down, eyes darting up, between words. "You don't seem angry." "I've spent my anger," I said. "Now I just want my name back." He pushed a small recorder closer to me. The red light blinked on. "Go ahead, Mrs. Lee, tell me what happened." So I did. I told him about the transfers, the forged papers, the police report, the meeting, the recording. I told him about the church flyers that mourned a woman who was still paying her own bills. His face shifted from curiosity to disbelief. "You're saying your daughter—" "Yes," I cut in. "My daughter. No need to soften it." He exhaled, looking around as though the walls themselves might react. This is going to make noise." "It should," I said. Silence did enough damage. He hesitated. "Do you have documentation?" I slid a small envelope across the desk. Inside were copies, bank records, notarized letters, the police note, and the signature sheets, all neatly ordered. "Every lie leaves paper behind," I said. He opened one and studied the handwriting. "You kept everything." "I had to," I said. "When people decide you're gone, you learn to keep receipts." He didn't laugh. He just nodded again, as if the gravity finally settled. After an hour, he closed his notebook and said, "I'll print this in full. Your words, not mine." "Then make sure my name's spelled right," I said. He smiled faintly. "That's a promise." The next morning, the article ran. The headline was plain and brutal. "Local woman declared dead, speaks out on fraud." Underneath, my photograph, the same one my daughter had used for the false memorial post. Only now, the caption read, "Alive and fighting back." The phone started ringing before 8. Old neighbors, friends who had drifted away when the rumors began. Some didn't know what to say, some cried. One woman whispered, "I can't believe it. I lit a candle for you." "I know," I said gently. "You meant well." The calls kept coming. Some offered apologies, others excuses. I didn't need either. I just listened. The sound of their voices felt like fresh air after months of sealed windows. By 10, the reporter called. "You're trending," he said. "The online version's blowing up. People are demanding follow-ups. They want to know how this could happen." "It happened because people believed what was easy," I said, "and I made it easy for them." He paused. "Would you like to give a statement for the follow-up?" "I already did," I replied. "It's printed." He laughed softly. "Fair enough." I sat by the window, newspapers spread across my lap. The ink still smelled sharp, like something freshly alive. The print smudged faintly against my fingers, but I didn't mind. Every word was proof. One line near the bottom caught me off guard. Margaret Lee's case raises questions about how easily narratives can be manipulated when trust and inheritance collide. Inheritance. That word used to mean comfort. Now it sounded like a weapon. But at least now it was visible, named, documented, public. At 11:30, another call came through. This one from a local radio host asking if I'd go on air. I said no. The paper said enough, I told her. As noon approached, the sunlight brightened through the blinds. I folded the newspaper carefully, smoothing the creases. On the table beside it lay the same fountain pen she'd once used to forge my name. I had kept it, not as a reminder of her betrayal, but of what I survived. I glanced at the clock. 12:03. Somewhere out there, she was reading the same headline. I wondered what she felt. Shock, shame, fear, maybe all three. For the first time in months, my name felt mine again. Not whispered, not doubted, not pitied, printed in black and white. By noon, everyone knew I was alive. "Do you still claim your mother's dead?" The lawyer's question hung in the air, sharper than any accusation. The courtroom went quiet, the kind of silence that makes people hold their breath without realizing it. She sat at the witness table, eyes darting between her attorney and the floor. For the first time, she didn't have a ready answer. I sat behind her, hands folded in my lap. The wood of the bench was cold against my palms. I could feel every second stretch. The walls smelled faintly of polish and paper, the same mix that always meant finality. The judge leaned forward. "Answer the question." She cleared her throat. I might have made a mistake in the paperwork." The lawyer stepped closer. "A mistake that included funeral announcements, forged authorizations, and the withdrawal of over $30,000 in estate funds?" Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean, it wasn't supposed to—" He cut her off. "Please look at Exhibit C." He opened the folder and held it up. Your mother's signature, the same one repeated on 5 separate transfers. Her attorney whispered something to her, but she stayed quiet. The room had turned into still glass. No one dared to move. I watched her chest rise and fall faster, her jaw tightening as the papers slid in front of her. My name stared back from each sheet, written in that too-perfect curve she thought would pass for mine. "Do you recognize this handwriting?" the lawyer asked. She hesitated, eyes glancing toward me just once before she looked down again. "It looks like mine." "No," he said evenly. "It looks like your mother's. That's the point." The judge adjusted his glasses. "Is there any dispute that these were submitted to the bank under false pretenses?" Her lawyer shook his head slowly. "No, Your Honor. My client acknowledges the documents were improper." The judge leaned back. "Improper? That's an understatement." He flipped through the pages. "You declared a living person deceased. You used her identity to access funds. You misled community institutions. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's fraud." She buried her face in her hands. The judge turned to the clerk. "Read the restitution clause." The clerk's voice was steady. "Restitution in the full amount of transferred assets and associated penalties. Immediate freeze on all remaining accounts tied to the fraudulent activity. Further criminal consideration at the discretion of the court." I closed my eyes for a moment. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted the truth to have weight again. And now it did. Her lawyer tried one last plea. "Your Honor, my client was under emotional distress. She believed—" "Believed?" the judge interrupted. "She believed her own lie long enough to profit from it. There's a difference." I looked at her then, not as a mother or a victim, but as someone who had finally run out of stories. The girl who once begged me for help with her first apartment lease was now explaining why she'd faked my death to get the deed. When the hearing recessed for lunch, the hall outside felt wider than before. My attorney, the same quiet man who'd helped me with the newspaper interview, handed me the court transcript draft. "Keep this," he said. "It's your clean slate." I nodded. "How long before the ruling's public?" "By morning," he said. "The record stands." I took the folder from him. The paper was warm from his hand, still faintly smelling of ink. Back inside, the judge returned. The room settled again. Her chair squeaked as she sat down. The judge tapped the papers once against the desk, aligning them. "I'm ordering formal restitution," he said. "And given the circumstances, the court recommends psychological evaluation and financial guardianship review." She didn't look up. "Mrs. Lee," he continued, turning to me, "your statements and evidence have been entered without objection. The record acknowledges you as the lawful owner of all disputed property and assets." For a second, the room blurred. I'd waited months to hear that. Simple words, but enough to undo a year of lies. The judge raised his gavel. "Court is adjourned." The sound that followed wasn't just a strike of wood. It was final, solid, like the closing of a door that would never open again. The gavel sounded like closing a door. She left a box on my porch. It was small, plain, and taped unevenly at the corners, like she'd packed it in a hurry. The evening air was heavy, the sky dulling into gray. I stood there for a long time, just staring at it. No name on top, only my address in her handwriting. My heart knew before my mind caught up. I brought it inside, setting it on the table where the mail usually piled up, old bills, newsletters, and one unpaid electric notice. The house was quiet, but I could still hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, steady and low. Somehow that sound kept me company through every silent night these past few months. I sliced the tape open. Inside was a smaller box wrapped in white tissue. When I pulled it free, a faint trace of perfume lifted into the air. It was the same kind she used to wear in high school, light and sweet, the kind that clung to winter scarves. Beneath it lay a folded letter and something that glinted in the fading light. The pendant. My pendant. The one her father gave me on our 10th anniversary. I had worn it every day until she took it, telling me it didn't suit someone my age. The chain was still broken where she'd yanked it that day in anger. The pendant itself was clean, too clean, as if she'd scrubbed it to erase her guilt. I unfolded the letter slowly. It was short, just 5 words at the top. "I'm sorry for everything." Below that, nothing but her name. No explanations, no excuses, just silence dressed as apology. I sat back in the chair, staring at the box. The porch light flickered once, throwing shadows across the table. I traced the edge of the pendant with my thumb. It felt heavier than it ever had before. At 7 o'clock, the mail courier returned. He'd forgotten the delivery receipt. He glanced at the open box. "Guess it's from family?" I nodded. "Yes, the kind that takes years to arrive." He looked uncomfortable, handed me the slip, and left without another word. I signed it automatically, my handwriting steady, even though my chest wasn't. The words, "I'm sorry," echoed louder than the sound of the closing door. I'd imagined hearing them so many times, rehearsed how I might respond. But now that they were here, written instead of spoken, they landed differently. Hollow, weightless, and too late. I placed the pendant on the table beside the letter. For a long while I just sat there, listening to the distant sound of a car engine fade down the street. The evening light stretched thin through the blinds, laying soft stripes across the paper. I thought about how she must have felt writing it. Maybe in her apartment, maybe crying, maybe not at all. Maybe she sent it because someone told her it was the right thing to do. Maybe she sent it because she couldn't carry the guilt anymore. I'd stopped guessing her reasons a long time ago. The truth was, forgiveness wasn't a letter you could just mail. It wasn't a refund or a return. It was something slower, something you had to live with until the sharpness dulled. I closed the box and set it back on the porch where I'd found it. The air was cooler now. The street lamps flickered on, one by one, spreading their soft orange glow down the road. The porch boards creaked under my feet as I sat down. The same spot where everything had started months ago. The arguments, the lies, the moment I realized she wasn't protecting me. She was replacing me. I looked at the empty street, Then at the box. A memory surfaced, her as a little girl, sitting here one summer night, telling me she wanted to be just like me when she grew up. I remember laughing then. I didn't know how literal she'd take it. The crickets began their usual chorus. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a door shut. Life, ordinary and unbothered, went on. I picked up the letter once more, folded it neatly, and slipped it inside the box. I didn't know what to do with it yet. Keep it, burn it, or bury it with everything else she'd taken, and returned half-heartedly. But I did know one thing. Some debts can't be refunded. Peace costs money, too. That's what I told myself the first morning I woke up in my new place. The air was cold enough to see my breath, the kind of cold that makes quiet feel heavier. I turned on the heater and listened to it sputter before settling into a soft hum. That sound meant ownership. No borrowed walls, no shared keys, no lies left inside my mailbox. The apartment was smaller, but it was mine. 2 rooms, 1 window that faced east, and rent I could actually afford without asking anyone for help. I'd met with the housing office last week, signed the new lease, and arranged a modest payment plan through my pension. Every figure on that paper was honest, earned, owed, and manageable. As I made coffee, the steam fogged the window for a moment, blurring the snow outside. I stood there, cup in hand, feeling that rare stillness that doesn't ask for permission. It wasn't happiness yet. It was something simpler. Relief. The woman from the housing office had said, "It's a quiet neighborhood. You'll like it here." She was right. The only sounds now were the creak of the floor and the slow ticking of the heater. I sat at the small table where all my bills were stacked neatly: rent, gas, groceries, utilities. Each envelope felt lighter than the ones I used to open at the old house. Back then, every number reminded me of someone else's control. Now, each one was proof that survival didn't have to come with shame. By 9, I had already written out 3 checks: rent, the electricity deposit, and the first installment for my insurance renewal. The amounts weren't large, but they were mine. I ran my hand over the stack before sealing the envelopes. "Every dollar is freedom," I whispered. I glanced at the heater again. The metal glowed faintly, uneven but steady. I remembered how just months ago I'd sit in a house filled with expensive furniture and still feel cold. Now, with nothing but this buzzing little machine and a thrifted blanket, I felt warmer. A knock came at the door. It was the mail carrier, a younger man, cheerful, gloved against the cold. "New tenant?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "New everything." He smiled. "Then I'll make sure your mail finds you properly this time." "That'd be nice," I said. After he left, I noticed one more envelope tucked inside the pile, a welcome letter from the building manager, reminding residents about winter power saving. It mentioned the shared cost of heat in the building. "Community billing," it said. For once, that phrase didn't sound threatening. It sounded fair. I spent the late morning arranging what little I had: 1 pot, 2 plates, a small photo frame. Inside the frame was an old picture of me, years younger, standing beside a lake before everything went wrong. I placed it by the heater, the warmth from it softening the glass just enough to leave a faint haze. For a moment, I thought about my daughter, about how silence had replaced the constant noise of her manipulation. I wondered if she ever thought of me when paying her own bills now. Maybe guilt shows up like a due date. You ignore it until it's too late. But that wasn't mine to manage anymore. My only job was to keep the heat running and the lights steady. I checked the thermostat, 68 degrees. Just right. By noon, sunlight crept across the floor, catching on the silver pen I'd used to sign my lease. I picked it up again, turning it between my fingers. That signature had felt like a full stop at the end of a long, bruised sentence. I made a small note in my checkbook. Paid January. Seeing the word filled me with something close to pride, not loud or cinematic, just real. The phone rang once. It was the bank confirming my new account setup for direct deposits. The clerk on the line said, "You'll get your first pension credit next Thursday." "Perfect," I said. "That's right before rent's due." He laughed softly. "You're organized." "I've had practice," I replied. After the call, I turned off the kettle and sat back down. The room was still, but it didn't feel empty anymore. The heater hummed like quiet applause in the background, steady and loyal. I took one last look at the lease pinned to the wall. The ink from my signature had bled slightly into the paper, leaving a soft blur around the edges. It looked human, imperfect, earned. I reached for the switch beside me and turned on the lamp. The bulb flickered once before staying bright. I smiled. I didn't need anyone to keep the lights on. I kept one room empty, just in case. It wasn't out of hope, not exactly. More like respect for what once was, and what might someday return. The room was plain, a single bed, white sheets, no pictures on the wall. Morning sunlight spilled across the floorboards in long, slow lines. That light felt different now, warmer, honest. It had been 6 months since the hearing. I'd moved forward the only way I knew how, quietly. Most mornings, I walked to the community center 2 blocks away. They ran a housing program for people starting over, and I signed up as a volunteer. It seemed fitting. I knew what it meant to lose a home, and worse, to lose belonging. The first day I walked in, the director looked at me over his glasses. "We could use someone who understands paperwork," he said. "Not everyone reads the fine print." I smiled. Neither did I. Once. Now I spent my mornings helping people fill out forms, rental applications, pension claims, late fee waivers. Every signature reminded me how fragile security really is. But every completed form reminded me it could be rebuilt. The building itself was old but clean. The walls smelled faintly of detergent and pencil shavings. The air carried the soft buzz of conversation, people talking not about what they'd lost, but about what they might still have left. I liked that sound. It felt alive. One morning, while sorting files, I came across a blank volunteer log. The top line was open for a signature. I filled it in. First name, last name, date. Seeing it written there felt oddly final, like my story had joined something bigger than my grief. At 10, the light shifted through the tall windows, turning the room golden. I stopped and leaned against the desk for a moment. The warmth hit my hands just right. It felt like being seen. Later, one of the younger volunteers handed me a clipboard. "We've got a woman waiting for help with a lease issue," she said. "She's about to lose her apartment." "Let her come in," I said. The woman walked in clutching a worn envelope. Her eyes were red from crying, her voice unsteady. "They raised my rent," she said. "I can't pay it all this month." I pulled up a chair for her. "Then let's see what we can do." As she explained, I listened the way I wished someone had listened to me, without judgment, without hurry. I filled in her details, guided her through each line, and when she signed her name, she whispered, "Thank you. I thought no one cared." I smiled faintly. Someone always does. You just have to find them. When she left, she squeezed my hand before walking out. I sat there for a minute after she was gone, looking at the empty chair she'd left behind. It felt like a quiet mirror of my own story. Pain first, then purpose. Back home that evening, I unlocked the spare room and stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of detergent, same as the center. I opened the curtains, letting the light in until the whole space glowed soft and warm. On the small table beside the bed sat one thing, the room key from my old house. The metal had dulled, but it still carried its shape. I kept it as a reminder. Some rooms you lose, others you rebuild. I sat on the edge of the bed, tracing the outline of that key with my thumb. "You made it," I whispered. "Maybe not to the same life, but to one worth living." A small framed note hung near the door. It was something one of the volunteers had given me weeks ago, handwritten in blue ink. "Healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering differently." I stood up, closed the window, and let the evening settle. The house creaked gently, familiar now, almost kind. I turned off the hallway light. but not before glancing back at that empty room one last time. "I kept one room empty," I said softly, "just in case someone else needs to start over too." Then I locked the door, steady and sure. My reflection in the glass caught the last stretch of sunlight fading from the yard. For a moment, I thought of everything it took to reach this peace. Every loss, every lie, every step back into my own name. They buried my life, and I dug it back up. I walked to the switch by the door, pressed it once, and watched as the hallway glowed again. I lived to see the light turn on again. Did you enjoy this story? Tell me which city you're listening from. I read every comment. If the story touched you, you can support the channel with a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this every day. Your encouragement really helps. I'd love to hear your thoughts and what moments stayed with you. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's more on the channel as well. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next life story. With respect and gratitude.